3 years of marriage ended with a single sentence. My husband placed a set of divorce papers on the table and said he had good news. My childhood best friend was pregnant with his baby. What he did not know was that 3 days earlier, his own mother had taken me to a fertility clinic. And the results were about to destroy everything he believed. The cafe was quiet that afternoon, the kind of quiet that usually feels peaceful. Soft music played in the background. People spoke in low voices over coffee and laptops. Outside the tall glass windows, Seattle's gray sky hung over the city like a heavy curtain. Inside, my marriage was ending. Olivia, sign it. Daniel Carter stood across from me, his voice flat and impatient. The divorce agreement lay on the table between us. The paper was thin and light, yet somehow it felt heavier than anything I had ever held. I lowered my eyes and read the first line slowly. 3 years of marriage reduced to a few cold paragraphs of legal language. Daniel shifted his weight and crossed his arms. He was already irritated that I had not reacted the way he expected. Next to him stood Lily Harper. Once, Lily had been the closest person in my life after my family. We had grown up together in the same neighborhood. We had shared late-night talks, birthdays, secrets, and dreams about the future. Now she stood beside my husband with one hand resting gently on her stomach. Her belly was only slightly curved, but the message was obvious. She was pregnant. Olivia, I'm really sorry, Lily said softly. Her voice trembled just enough to sound convincing. She lowered her head as if she were ashamed, but the corner of her mouth carried a faint smile she could not quite hide. Daniel and I didn't plan for this, she continued quietly. But we realized our feelings are real. And the baby deserves a complete family. Daniel placed his arm around her shoulders. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a declaration of ownership. You can't have children, he said bluntly, looking down at me. So this changes everything. Lily is carrying my child. I'm not the kind of man who walks away from responsibility. The words hung in the air like smoke. I lifted the coffee cup in front of me. The coffee had gone cold while they spoke. Still, I took a slow sip. Neither of them expected that. Daniel had been waiting for tears. He had been waiting for anger, accusations, or desperation. Instead he was looking at a woman who appeared strangely calm. My eyes moved across the table. They passed over the ultrasound image Lily had placed beside the divorce papers. The black and white photograph was meant to be proof of her victory. A faint smile touched my lips. So, I said quietly, I leave the marriage with nothing. Daniel gave a short laugh. Let's be realistic, Olivia. His tone carried the smug confidence of a man who believed he had already won. The house belongs to my parents. The car you drive is in my name. Even the credit cards you use come from my account. He leaned slightly forward. Without me, what exactly do you have? Beside him, Lily gently tugged at his sleeve. Daniel, maybe we should help Olivia a little, she said in a soft voice that sounded almost compassionate. She looked at me as if she were offering charity. $100,000 should be enough for a small apartment and a fresh start. Her kindness was almost touching. $100,000. That was the price she had placed on my 3-year marriage. Daniel nodded approvingly. Lily is generous, he said. Take the money, sign the papers, and we can end this peacefully. For a moment I said nothing. Then I laughed. It was not the bitter laugh of someone who had been humiliated. It was quiet and genuine, as if I had just heard something unexpectedly amusing. The sound made both of them freeze. Daniel's expression darkened. "What's so funny?" I set the coffee cup down carefully. "Daniel," I said calmly, "do you really think you know me?" His eyebrows pulled together in confusion. "What kind of question is that?" I did not answer him immediately. Instead, I picked up the divorce agreement and turned the pages slowly. The paper rustled softly in the silence. Finally, I placed it back on the table. "Fine," I said. Relief appeared on Daniel's face almost instantly. "I agree to the divorce." Lily let out a small breath she had been holding. But before either of them could celebrate, I continued speaking. "We'll finish the rest in court." Daniel's relief vanished. I stood up and reached for my bag. "You heard me. You think you can fight this?" Daniel scoffed. "Olivia, you don't even have a job." I paused beside the table. For the first time since the conversation began, I looked directly into his eyes. There was no anger in my expression. Only quiet certainty. "We'll see," I said simply. Then I turned and walked away. My heels clicked against the cafe floor in steady, measured steps. Behind me, I could feel their stunned silence. Outside, the Seattle air felt cold and sharp. Cars moved slowly along the wet streets. The glass towers of the city reflected the gray sky above. I stopped at the corner and pulled my phone from my bag. The number I dialed connected almost immediately. The voice on the other end was professional and calm. I spoke quietly. "Activate contingency plan A." There was a brief pause. Then the voice replied, "Understood." I ended the call and looked down at the dark screen of the phone. Daniel Carter believed he had just divorced a helpless housewife. He believed he had won. What he did not understand was that the game had not even started yet. That night, Olivia Carter did not return to the house she had shared with Daniel. She checked into a penthouse suite at a 5-star hotel overlooking Elliott Bay. The elevator doors opened directly into a quiet private lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Seattle skyline, glowing under the evening rain. Lights from the harbor reflected across the dark water like scattered stars. Olivia stepped inside the suite and placed her bag on the polished table near the entrance. For the first time since the cafe, she allowed herself to exhale slowly. The silence in the room felt different from the silence of the afternoon. It was calm. Her phone vibrated on the table. A message. The sender's name appeared on the screen. Lily Harper. Olivia stared at the name for a moment before opening it. A photograph filled the screen. Daniel and Lily were sitting close together, on the white leather sofa in Olivia's living room. Daniel's arm rested comfortably around Lily's shoulders. Lily leaned against him with a bright smile. In her hand she held an ultrasound image. The message beneath the photo read, "Daniel says he has never been this happy before." Olivia studied the picture carefully. The sofa had been her choice. She had spent nearly an hour in the furniture store, deciding between 3 different designs, before selecting that one. The pale blue curtains in the background were hers too. Even the small painting hanging on the wall had been a gift from her parents. Now Lily sat there like the new owner of everything. Another message appeared seconds later. "We will keep the house exactly the same. After all, someone new will be living here soon." Olivia could almost imagine the smile on Lily's face as she typed those words. For years Lily had known how to hurt people, with quiet precision. Olivia closed the message and saved the photo. Then she typed 2 simple words. "Message received." Nothing more. No accusation, just calm acknowledgement. Several seconds passed. Then another message appeared. Olivia, please do not misunderstand me. I know I hurt you, but I cannot live without Daniel. And now there is a baby involved. If you need more money, I can ask Daniel to give you more. Maybe $200,000. Please just stop making things difficult for us. Olivia stared at the screen for a long moment. Lily had always used the same strategy. First the knife, then the apology. She would wound someone deeply, and then pretend to be the reasonable one. It had worked for years. But tonight Olivia simply set the phone down without replying. Silence could be more powerful than words. Half an hour later the phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. Olivia answered. His voice exploded through the speaker immediately. Olivia, what did you say to Lily? Nothing, she replied calmly. Do not lie to me, Daniel snapped. She was trying to be generous and you made her cry. Olivia walked slowly toward the large window, overlooking the harbor. I did not say anything, she repeated. You are unbelievable, Daniel said angrily. Lily is pregnant and emotionally sensitive. If you keep upsetting her, I swear I will not tolerate it. Olivia listened quietly. 3 years ago, she had believed Daniel's anger meant he cared deeply about things. Now she understood something different. Daniel was simply a man, who needed to believe he was always right. Daniel, she said calmly, interrupting his speech. You should take Lily to a proper prenatal appointment soon. There was a short pause. What do you mean by that? Olivia allowed a small smile to appear. Pregnancy requires careful medical supervision, she said. Especially when the situation is complicated. What are you trying to imply? Nothing at all, Olivia said softly. Just take good care of her. Then she ended the call. The room became quiet again. Olivia placed the phone on the table and walked to the window. Rain fell softly against the glass. Daniel believed Olivia had depended on him for everything. That belief had always amused her. 5 years earlier, before she even met Daniel, Olivia had quietly founded an investment company, called Carter Global Holdings. She had started small, working with a handful of promising technology startups. Her instincts for business turned out to be exceptional. Within a few years her investments had multiplied rapidly. Today Carter Global managed projects in several major cities. But Olivia had always remained in the background. She preferred control without attention. Daniel had never asked many questions about her past or her finances. He had assumed she was simply comfortable because of her parents. Olivia had allowed him to believe that. What Daniel did not know was that, several years earlier, his struggling construction firm had almost collapsed. At the last moment, a silent investor had stepped in and stabilized the company. That investor had been Olivia. She had saved his business without telling him. At the time, she believed she was protecting their future together. Now that decision felt strangely ironic. Olivia turned away from the window, and picked up her phone again. She opened another contact. Zachary Chen, her legal advisor. The call connected quickly. Good evening, Ms. Carter, Zachary said. Everything is ready, Olivia replied calmly. Excellent, he answered. We have already reviewed Daniel Carter's financial structure. His company is extremely vulnerable. That is good to know. Do you want us to begin tomorrow? Olivia paused for a moment. No, she said. Wait 3 days. 3 days? May I ask why? Olivia looked out at the city again. Because Daniel's mother is celebrating her 60th birthday in 3 days, she said quietly. And the entire Carter family will be there. Zachary understood immediately. I see, he said. Olivia ended the call and set the phone down. Across the city, Daniel Carter believed his new life had already begun. He believed he had escaped his quiet, ordinary wife. What he did not realize was that, the woman he had discarded, was the same person who had been quietly holding his world together. And when the truth finally appeared, it would arrive all at once. 3 days after the meeting at the cafe, Daniel Carter drove Lily Harper to his parents' house in Bellevue. The Carter home stood on a quiet hill overlooking Lake Washington. It was large, elegant, and built with the kind of careful pride that came from years of steady success. Daniel parked in the circular driveway and turned off the engine. Lily adjusted the soft shawl around her shoulders, and checked her reflection in the small mirror above the visor. "You think your mother will be happy?" she asked. Daniel gave a confident smile. "Of course she will. She has been waiting for a grandchild for years." He stepped out of the car and walked around to open Lily's door. Inside the house, Margaret Carter was arranging flowers on the dining table when she heard the door open. She called from the kitchen. Margaret stepped into the hallway and froze when she saw the woman beside her son. Lily Harper. For a brief moment Margaret said nothing. Her eyes moved from Lily's face to the hand resting protectively on her stomach. Daniel smiled proudly. "Mom, I have news." Margaret placed the flowers down slowly. "What kind of news?" Daniel wrapped his arm around Lily's shoulders. "Lily is pregnant." The words settled into the room like a sudden storm. Margaret stared at them in silence. A strange expression crossed her face. Not anger. Something closer to confusion. "Pregnant," she repeated slowly. Lily lowered her eyes modestly. Daniel expected excitement. Instead his mother walked slowly to the sofa and sat down. Her mind had already begun moving through a memory she could not ignore. 3 days earlier she had driven Olivia Carter to a private fertility clinic. Margaret remembered the quiet waiting room. The polite doctor. The careful explanations about medical tests. Olivia had remained calm the entire time. Margaret had admired that about her daughter-in-law. Daniel had always been impulsive and emotional, but Olivia was thoughtful and steady. That was why Margaret had trusted her. Now the timeline made no sense. Margaret looked up again. "How many weeks pregnant are you?" she asked Lily. The question seemed simple, but it made Lily hesitate for a fraction of a second. "About 6 weeks, she answered. Margaret nodded slowly. 6 weeks. Her eyes moved briefly toward Daniel. 6 weeks meant the pregnancy had begun, long before Olivia and Daniel had separated. Margaret stood again and forced a polite smile. "Well," she said calmly, "this is certainly unexpected news." Daniel relaxed, assuming the moment had passed. "I knew you would understand," he said. "After all, Olivia could never give us a child." Margaret's eyes sharpened slightly. "Is that what she told you?" Daniel shrugged. "It is obvious, Mom. We tried for 3 years and nothing happened." Margaret did not respond. She simply turned toward the kitchen. "Dinner will be ready soon," she said. As she walked away, her expression grew thoughtful. Margaret Carter had spent 30 years helping her husband build their family business. She had negotiated contracts, solved financial crises, and handled difficult people. She knew how to recognize when something did not add up. And right now nothing about this situation felt right. Later that evening, While Daniel and Lily spoke happily in the living room, Margaret stepped into her private study and closed the door. She sat at her desk and picked up her phone. The number she dialed connected after 2 rings. "Good evening," a calm male voice answered. "This is David Harris." Margaret spoke quietly. "Harris, this is Margaret Carter. I need your services again." Quote, David Harris was a private investigator Margaret had worked with years earlier during a business dispute. "What seems to be the problem?" Margaret hesitated briefly. "My son believes his girlfriend is pregnant with his child. And you are not convinced." "No," Margaret said. "I want you to look into Lily Harper's background. Financial records, relationships, travel history, anything unusual. How quickly do you need results?" Margaret glanced toward the closed study door. "Before my birthday banquet this weekend." Quote, there was a short pause. "That will require a great deal of work." "I understand," Margaret replied. "Your usual fee will be doubled." David Harris chuckled quietly. "In that case, I will begin immediately." Margaret ended the call and leaned back in her chair. Her instincts rarely failed her. Something about Lily Harper felt carefully staged. Too perfect. Too convenient. Meanwhile in downtown Seattle, Olivia Carter stood inside the quiet office of Carter Global Holdings. The city lights shimmered beyond the wide glass windows. Her assistant approached with a folder. "Everything is ready for Saturday evening," he said. Olivia opened the folder and reviewed the details. The ballroom reservation, the guest list, the catering arrangements, Margaret Carter's 60th birthday celebration. Olivia had organized the entire event weeks earlier, long before the divorce. "Excellent," Olivia said. "Make sure the investigator's report is delivered directly to the ballroom when it arrives." Her assistant nodded. Olivia closed the folder and looked out across the city. Across town, Daniel Carter believed he was beginning a new chapter in his life. He believed the difficult part was already over. But in 3 days, the entire Carter family would gather in one room. And when the truth finally arrived, there would be nowhere left to hide. Saturday evening arrived with the quiet elegance of early autumn in Seattle. The ballroom of the Grand Harbor Hotel glowed under soft golden lights. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished floors, while a string quartet played near the tall windows overlooking Elliott Bay. It was Margaret Carter's 60th birthday celebration. Nearly every influential friend and business associate of the Carter family had been invited. At the entrance of the ballroom, Daniel Carter stood proudly beside Lily Harper, greeting guests as they arrived. Lily wore a pale blue dress that gently highlighted the curve of her stomach. One hand rested protectively over it, a silent reminder to everyone of the good news. Daniel seemed more confident than he had in weeks. In his mind, this evening marked the beginning of his new life. Across the room, Olivia Carter stood quietly among the guests. She wore a simple black evening dress, and spoke politely with a few acquaintances. Most people assumed she had come only to show respect to Margaret, despite the recent divorce. Very few realized she had arranged nearly every detail of the celebration. The music softened as Margaret Carter stepped toward the small stage, near the center of the ballroom. The room gradually fell silent. Daniel raised a glass and smiled broadly. "Before we begin celebrating my mother's birthday," he announced, "I have something special to share with everyone." He placed his arm around Lily's shoulders. "Lily and I are expecting a baby." A ripple of surprise moved through the guests, followed by polite applause. Daniel looked proud of himself. For a brief moment it seemed like the perfect announcement. Then Margaret Carter slowly stood. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm but clear. "Daniel," she said, "may I ask Lily a question?" Daniel turned toward her, slightly confused. "Of course." Margaret looked directly at Lily. "Exactly how many weeks pregnant are you?" The room grew quiet. Lily's smile flickered for the briefest second. "About 6 weeks," she answered. Margaret nodded thoughtfully. 6 weeks. She turned toward the entrance of the ballroom. "Harris," she said, "would you please come in?" A tall man stepped forward from the doorway holding a thin envelope. Guests began exchanging curious glances. Daniel frowned. "Mom, what is this about?" Margaret accepted the envelope and opened it slowly. Inside were several photographs and printed documents. She handed them to Daniel without a word. "Perhaps you should read these," she said. Daniel scanned the first page. His confident smile disappeared instantly. The photographs showed Lily leaving a downtown apartment building late at night. But Daniel was not the man beside her. Another photograph showed Lily entering the same building, with a different man 2 weeks later. The documents attached beneath the photos included phone records and financial transfers. Daniel's face turned pale. "What is this?" he demanded. Margaret spoke quietly. "The results of a background investigation." Quote, Lily's hands began to tremble. "This is ridiculous," she said quickly. "Someone must be lying." Margaret's expression did not change. "There is more." She removed one final document from the envelope. "A DNA test has already been arranged," she continued. "Based on the timeline of your pregnancy, there is a strong possibility that Daniel is not the father of this child." A murmur spread across the ballroom. Guests leaned closer to one another, whispering in disbelief. Daniel looked at Lily as if seeing her for the first time. "Tell me this is not true," he said quietly. Lily's eyes darted around the room. For the first time since entering the ballroom, she looked completely terrified. "I can explain," she said. But her voice lacked conviction. Across the room, Olivia Carter stood silently among the guests. She did not interrupt. She did not celebrate. She simply watched as the truth unfolded. Daniel lowered the documents slowly. The confident man who had proudly announced his future moments earlier, now looked lost. "You said the baby was mine," he whispered. Lily's lips trembled. "I thought it was," she said weakly. The room erupted with whispers. Margaret Carter closed the envelope and stepped away from the stage. Her expression held a quiet sadness. 3 years of her son's marriage had been destroyed for nothing. Daniel stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, as the weight of his mistake settled around him. And across the room, Olivia Carter quietly set down her glass. The truth had finally arrived. Unfortunately for Daniel Carter, it had come far too late. The Carter family birthday banquet ended far earlier than anyone expected. What was meant to be a night of celebration dissolved into quiet whispers and uncomfortable exits. Guests left the ballroom in small groups, speaking in low voices as they passed one another near the doors. News travels quickly in rooms like that. By the next morning, nearly everyone in Daniel Carter's professional circle had heard the story. His pregnant girlfriend, the investigation, the possibility that the child was not even his. Reputation, once damaged, rarely heals quickly. Daniel remained in the ballroom long after most people had gone. The music had stopped. The tables were half empty. Staff moved quietly around the room clearing glasses and folding linen. Across the hall, Margaret Carter stood near the tall windows looking out over the dark harbor. Daniel approached slowly. "Mom," he said. Margaret did not turn around immediately. When she finally looked at him, her expression carried more disappointment than anger. "You destroyed your marriage for a lie," she said quietly. Daniel lowered his eyes. "I didn't know." "No," Margaret replied. "You didn't bother to find out." The words landed heavily between them. For the first time that evening, Daniel looked around the ballroom and noticed something else. Olivia was gone. She had left quietly during the chaos. Just as quietly as she had lived during their marriage. The following weeks were difficult for Daniel Carter. The rumors surrounding the banquet spread quickly through Seattle's business community. Several investors suddenly became cautious about continuing their partnerships with his company. Projects were delayed. 2 important clients withdrew from negotiations. At first Daniel believed the situation would settle down with time. Then the financial reports began arriving. One contract after another collapsed. Funding that had once seemed secure suddenly disappeared. Within 3 months the Carter Construction Group faced serious financial problems. Daniel sat in his office late one evening, staring at the numbers on his computer screen. Nothing made sense. The company had survived difficult periods before. Someone had always stepped in to stabilize things. This time no help arrived. Finally he called the company's financial advisor. "Explain this to me," Daniel demanded. "Why are our backup investors withdrawing?" The advisor hesitated before answering. "There is something you should know. The private investor who supported your company for the past 3 years has quietly withdrawn their financial backing." Daniel frowned. "What investor? You never asked who it was." There was a short pause on the line. The investor was Olivia Carter. Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. "What did you say?" "She owned the holding company that purchased your company's debt 3 years ago. Without that support your business would have failed much earlier." Daniel stared at the wall in stunned silence. The quiet woman he had dismissed as a dependent housewife. The woman he had believed needed him to survive. She had been the one protecting his company the entire time. Now that protection was gone. And with it, the fragile stability of his entire business. A week later Daniel stood outside a tall glass office tower in downtown Seattle. The building belonged to Carter Global Holdings, Olivia's company. He had never been here before. Inside the lobby, the receptionist directed him to the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, Olivia Carter was standing near the wide windows of her office. The Seattle skyline stretched out behind her. She turned as Daniel entered. Her expression remained calm. "Olivia," he said quietly. "I need to talk to you." She nodded politely and gestured toward a chair. Daniel sat down slowly. "I made a mistake," he said. The words sounded weak even to him. Olivia waited. "I believed things that were not true," he continued. "I hurt you." "Yes," she said softly. Daniel took a breath. "I know I cannot change what happened. But maybe we could start again." Olivia studied him for a moment. The man sitting in front of her was very different from the confident husband who had thrown divorce papers across a cafe table weeks earlier. Finally she spoke. "Daniel," she said gently, "some truths arrived too late." He looked down at his hands. "I understand," he whispered. Olivia stood and walked toward the window. Below them the city moved with its usual rhythm of traffic and lights. Life continued forward, indifferent to personal tragedies. "For years," Olivia said quietly, "I believed love meant patience." She turned back toward him. Now I understand something else. What is that? Daniel asked. Self-respect matters more. Daniel said nothing. There was nothing left to argue. After a moment he stood and walked slowly toward the door. When he reached it, he paused. I hope you find happiness, he said. Olivia gave a small nod. I already have. Daniel left the office without looking back. Olivia remained by the window. The rain had stopped and the evening sky over Seattle had begun to clear. Far below, the lights of the city reflected across the water. 3 years of her life had ended in betrayal. But the truth had also set her free. And this time, the future belonged entirely to her.